to our amazing Infidelity Tales Lab family. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Your support means the world. Quick question. Where are you listening from today? Drop it below. Now let's dive into today's story. Thomas Baker's weathered hands gripped the PlayStation 5 boxes tighter as he climbed the stairs of his colonial home, the floorboards creaking beneath his measured steps. The overtime hours at the medical device company had been worth it. He could already picture the twins' faces lighting up on Christmas morning. At 13, Adam and Ethan were at that age where their father's approval meant everything, and Thomas had never let them down. The sound of his wife's voice stopped him cold outside the boys' bedroom door. Sarah's tone carried that saccharine sweetness she reserved for manipulation, a sound he'd grown to recognize over their 15 years of marriage. Your real father is Dad's best friend, Mike. He's been wanting to tell you for so long. Thomas's knuckles whitened around the console boxes. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, but his mind remained razor-sharp, cataloging every word that filtered through the gap beneath the door. But that doesn't make sense. Adam's voice cracked with confusion. Dad's been here our whole life. He's the one who taught us baseball. Ethan finished his brother's thought, as twins often did. He's at every single game. He even coaches when Coach Stevens is sick. Sarah's dismissive laugh felt like acid in Thomas's ears. That's because Mike couldn't be there. Your real father's position as chief surgeon keeps him busy saving lives. Do you know how hard it's been for him, watching another man raise his children? If he's our real dad, why didn't he say anything before? Adam's question carried an edge of defiance that made Thomas's chest swell with pride. Because we had to wait, Sarah's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. The house will be paid off next month. I've already talked to my lawyer. At Christmas dinner, we'll tell everyone the truth. I'll get everything in the divorce, and then we can finally be a real family with Mike. The silence that followed felt like a physical weight. Thomas could picture his sons' faces. They had his expressions, if not his genes. Adam would be clenching his jaw, the way he did when batting against a difficult pitcher. Ethan would be picking at his bedspread, processing the information with the same methodical approach he applied to his science projects. Does Thomas know? Ethan's question was barely audible. Of course not. Sarah's voice dripped with condescension. He's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, is he? Always so trusting, so easily led. That's why Mike chose. She caught herself, but Thomas had heard enough. The pieces were falling into place. His rapid promotion at the medical supply company, the exclusive contracts with Mike's hospital, the friendly dinners where Mike had steered their conversations towards certain suppliers. Thomas had attributed it all to friendship and his own hard work. Fool. He moved silently away from the door, decades of coaching baseball lending him the stealth of a seasoned base stealer. The PlayStation boxes went into his study, along with the Christmas gifts he'd planned to wrap that evening. They would serve a different purpose now. From his desk drawer, Thomas withdrew the folder containing their house documents. Sarah's words echoed in his mind. I'll get everything in the divorce. His lips curved into a grim smile. She'd always underestimated him, mistaking his kindness for weakness. That would be her first mistake. Pulling out his phone, he typed a brief message to Detective Lauren Martinez. Need to meet. Old place. It's about Mike Williams. Lauren had been trying to build a case against corrupt hospital administrators for years. Now Thomas understood why she'd never been able to make anything stick. Before putting his phone away, he took one last look at his background, a photo of him teaching the twins to fish last summer. Their matching grins reflected his own. Blood or not, they were his sons. And he would make damn sure they learned one final lesson from him: how to serve justice cold. The diner where Thomas met Lauren hadn't changed in the 20 years they'd known each other. The same cracked leather booths, the same burnt coffee smell, the same flickering neon sign that cast alternating shadows across their faces. It was perfect. Nobody who mattered ever came here. Lauren slid into the booth across from him, her detective's badge conspicuously absent. This wasn't an official meeting. You look like hell, Tom. Wait till you hear why. Thomas pushed a manila envelope across the table. Everything I could find on the medical supply contracts between my company and Central Hospital. Pay special attention to the pricing structure. Lauren's eyes narrowed as she scanned the documents. 20 years on the force had given her a poker face that would shame Vegas professionals. But Thomas caught the slight tightening around her eyes. These prices are inflated by roughly 40% above market rate, Thomas finished. I always assumed it was standard healthcare markup. Until today. The waitress approached their table, but Lauren waved her away with a practiced gesture. Tell me everything. Thomas laid it out methodically. His chance meeting with Sarah 15 years ago, Mike's convenient job offered just before the twins were born, the steady stream of contracts that had earned him promotion after promotion. Son of a bitch, Lauren muttered, flipping through bank statements. The kickbacks are being laundered through offshore accounts. But that's not even the worst part. She pulled out her own file, thicker than his. Those medical devices you've been selling? They're counterfeits. High-quality Chinese knockoffs. Your signature is all over the import documentation. The coffee in Thomas's cup grew cold as Lauren explained the scope of the operation. Mike Williams hadn't just betrayed his friend. He'd built an entire criminal enterprise around him. Every promotion, every bonus, every proud moment of Thomas's career had been carefully orchestrated to create a perfect fall guy. We've been trying to crack this case for years, Lauren said, frustration evident in her voice. But the paperwork always led back to you. The perfect patsy, respected family man, little league coach, active in the community. No one would believe you were knowingly involved in something like this. Thomas's laugh was devoid of humor. And if anyone started asking questions, they could always reveal the truth about the twins. My reputation would be destroyed either way. What are you going to do? Thomas stared out the diner window, watching the neon sign's reflection dance across the rain-slick parking lot. Sarah's planning to announce the truth at Christmas dinner. She thinks it's her trump card. Destroy me personally and professionally in one move. We could arrest them now, Lauren offered. We have enough evidence. No. Thomas's voice was steel wrapped in silk. They've spent 13 years orchestrating my downfall. I owe them the same courtesy. He pulled out his phone, showing Lauren the real estate lawyer's confirmation email. I need a favor. How much do you know about irrevocable trusts? The DNA testing facility was sterile and impersonal, much like the truth it revealed. Thomas watched the lab technician process the hair samples he'd collected from the twins' combs. He told himself he didn't need the confirmation. He already knew the truth. But something in him needed to see it in black and white. Results should be ready in 48 hours, Mr. Baker, the technician said, her voice professionally neutral. Thomas nodded, already turning his attention to his phone. Sarah's email password hadn't been hard to crack, their anniversary date, because she'd always found irony amusing. What he found made his blood run cold. The emails between Sarah and Mike went back 13 years, to just before the twins were born. Their plan had been calculated from the start. Mike had orchestrated their meeting, knowing Sarah's type, ambitious, materialistic, willing to play the long game. They needed someone with a clean reputation, someone who could be manipulated through their sense of loyalty and family. He's perfect, Sarah had written. So earnest, so desperate to be a good husband and father. He'll never suspect a thing. Mike's response had been equally calculating. Once the import operation is established, we'll need his signature on everything. If anyone starts investigating, all roads will lead to him. By the time we're ready to move, he'll have signed enough documentation to spend decades in federal prison. The timestamps on the emails showed their patience. Years of careful manipulation, building Thomas up while laying the groundwork for his destruction. Every family dinner, every friendly golf game, every piece of business advice had been part of their plan. Thomas closed the email app and opened his photo gallery. Pictures of baseball games, fishing trips, science fairs filled his screen. In each one, his son smiled up at him with trust and admiration. Sarah and Mike had made one crucial mistake in their perfect plan. They'd given him something worth fighting for. His phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Trust paperwork is ready. Rebecca wants to meet? That was unexpected. Mike's wife had always seemed content in her role as successful surgeon spouse, hosting charity galas and tennis luncheons. Thomas had attended enough of their dinner parties to know she played the part of devoted wife perfectly. The meeting place Rebecca chose confirmed his suspicions about her carefully crafted image. The downtown legal library was private enough for conversation, but public enough to avoid suspicion. She sat primly at a back table, a designer handbag placed precisely next to a manila envelope. "I've been waiting for someone to figure it out," she said without preamble. 3 years I've been gathering evidence. Bank transfers, shipping manifestos, email exchanges. She slid a USB drive across the table. "Mike thinks I'm an idiot who only cares about my next charity auction. Sarah thinks I'm her closest confidant." Neither of them realized I was documenting everything. Thomas studied her carefully. "Why help me?" Rebecca's perfect posture didn't waver, but her manicured nails dug into her palm. "Because 13 years ago, my husband and your wife didn't just betray you. They betrayed those boys. Made them pawns in their game. I couldn't have children of my own, you see, but I've watched you raise those twins. You're 10 times the father Mike could ever be." She stood, smoothing her silk blouse with practiced precision. "Sarah's planning to take everything from you at Christmas. Make sure she gets exactly what she deserves." Thomas waited until she left before examining the USB drive's contents. Bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. Shell companies in Delaware. A complex web of fraud and deceit, all documented by a woman everyone had underestimated. His phone buzzed again. The DNA results were ready early. Thomas opened the attachment, though he already knew what it would say. Mike's paternity was confirmed, but it changed nothing. Biology didn't make a father. Love did. And Thomas Baker loved his sons enough to make sure justice was served. He had 9 days until Christmas. 9 days to prepare his own gifts. Ones that would ensure his boys understood the difference between blood and character, between biological parentage and real fatherhood. 9 days to teach them their final, most important lesson. Sometimes the greatest act of love is making sure justice is served, no matter the personal cost. The law office of Patricia Chin occupied the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise, its mahogany and brass fixtures speaking of old money and ironclad discretion. Thomas sat across from the trust attorney, watching her review the documents with methodical precision. Lauren Martinez stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her detective's badge displayed prominently on her belt, a deliberate choice that lent official weight to the proceedings. "The irrevocable trust structure is complex," Patricia explained, spreading out diagrams of the financial framework. "Once executed, you cannot modify or revoke it. The house, investments, and secondary properties will all transfer to the trust, with specific conditions for the boys' access." "Walk me through the security measures," Thomas said, his voice carrying the same quiet authority he used when managing million-dollar contracts. Patricia pulled out another document. "The trust is structured with 3 layers of protection. First, Lauren serves as primary trustee until the twins turn 21. Second, all major financial decisions require dual authorization from both boys once they're of age. Third, I've included a spendthrift clause that prevents creditors, or future ex-spouses, from accessing the trust assets. And the conditions for access? Maintenance of a 3.0 GPA, no criminal record, and completion of financial literacy courses I've arranged through Maxwell Investment Group. The boys will have to earn their legacy." Lauren turned from the window. "I've documented every contract between your company and Central Hospital for the past decade. The pattern of inflation is clear. Standard medical supplies marked up 40% above market rate. Specialized equipment at nearly 60% premium." "Mike got greedy," Thomas noted, initialing another page. "The markups increased every year." "That's not all," Lauren added, pulling out her own file. "The FDA's starting to ask questions about equipment certification. Several surgeries last month had complications that couldn't be explained by human error." Thomas's pen paused mid-signature. "The counterfeits are failing, which makes our timing crucial," Patricia interjected. "The house payment clears next week. We need everything transferred before." A knock interrupted them. Patricia's secretary entered with an urgent message. Rebecca Williams was waiting in the lobby. The conference room they chose for the meeting had no windows and a sophisticated white noise generator. Patricia took client confidentiality seriously. Rebecca entered like she was attending one of her hospital board meetings, but her perfect composure cracked when she saw the trust documents. "Those won't be enough," she said, placing a USB drive on the table. Mike's been using my charitable foundation to launder money. The foundation's legitimate work with third-world hospitals provided perfect cover for importing counterfeits. Sarah's been helping him move the profits offshore through a network of shell companies. Thomas studied Mike's wife carefully. The Rebecca Williams he knew lived for charity galas and tennis matches. This woman was something else entirely. I have videos, Rebecca continued, her manicured nails tapping the USB drive. Sarah loves to brag during our spa days. She never noticed the diamond pendant I always wear, the one with the built-in recorder. 3 years of conversations, each more incriminating than the last. Lauren picked up the drive. This is better than we hoped. There's more. Rebecca reached into her Hermes bag. Bank statements showing transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands, Singapore, and Switzerland. Documentation of charitable donations that never reached their intended hospitals. In this, she pulled out a final folder, proof that Mike knew about the twins before he orchestrated your meeting with Sarah. Thomas's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. Explain? Sarah wasn't just a random woman Mike pushed you toward. She was carefully chosen, ambitious enough to play the long game, materialistic enough to be controlled by money, and most importantly, already pregnant with Mike's children. They needed someone with an impeccable reputation to front their operation. A devoted family man would be above suspicion. Why help us? Lauren asked. Rebecca's perfect posture finally slipped, revealing a glimpse of raw pain. Because I couldn't have children, complications from a surgery Mike performed early in our marriage. He said it was unavoidable. Last month, I found records proving he'd made a deliberate choice during the procedure. Something about not wanting children complicating his plans. She stood, smoothing her designer suit. Sarah thinks she's taking everything from you at Christmas. Make sure she loses it all instead. After she left, Lauren plugged in the USB drive. The evidence was damning. Years of careful documentation, financial records, recorded conversations, even video footage from foundation events showing Mike meeting with suspicious medical suppliers. Thomas watched the evidence pile up on the screen, his expression unreadable. Time to accelerate the plan. The garage workbench was organized with military precision. Tools laid out in order of use, instruction manuals open to relevant pages, backup supplies ready if needed. Thomas had always believed in teaching through proper preparation. The key to maintaining any machine, he explained, guiding Adam through the oil change procedure, is understanding its parts. Cars, houses, bank accounts, they all follow the same principle. Ethan looked up from his detailed notes. Like how you taught us to break down complex math problems? Exactly. Thomas smiled, remembering countless homework sessions at the kitchen table. Big problems become manageable when you understand their components. The lessons had taken on new urgency this week. Yesterday was home repair, fixing leaky faucets, replacing electrical outlets, basic plumbing. Tomorrow would be financial management, budgeting, investing, understanding credit scores. Skills compressed into days that should have been taught over years. Dad, Adam said carefully, wiping oil from his hands, we overheard Mom on the phone with Uncle Mike last night. Thomas's hands stilled on the wrench. What did you hear? The twins exchanged their trademark look, the silent communication that had fascinated him since their birth. Finally, Ethan spoke. She was laughing about Christmas dinner. Said something about the big reveal and how you wouldn't know what hit you. She said we'd be moving into Uncle Mike's mansion, Adam added, his voice tight with suppressed anger. That we wouldn't need to know working-class skills anymore. Thomas set down his tools and faced his sons directly. Life has a way of revealing truth at unexpected moments. What matters isn't the size of your house or the money in your account. It's your character, how you handled both victory and defeat. That evening, after ensuring Sarah was absorbed in her phone calls with Mike, Thomas set up his recording equipment in the study. Lauren had helped him organize everything. Birthday messages, graduation speeches, life advice for major milestones. Videos that would bridge the gap when he couldn't be there in person. The hardest choices in life, he recorded, aren't between right and wrong. Those are easy. The hard choices come when you have to decide between justice and comfort, between truth and stability. Remember that strength isn't about winning every battle. It's about choosing which battles define you. Between recordings, he taught the twins other essential skills. How to spot surveillance equipment. The importance of keeping critical documents in multiple secure locations. When to trust their instincts about people's true intentions. Sarah noticed their increased time together, but misinterpreted it entirely. Getting in some last-minute father-son bonding, she asked one evening, her tone dripping with false sympathy. How sweet. Thomas met her gaze steadily. Just preparing them for the future. Her laugh was cold. Oh, don't worry. Mike and I have their future all planned out. She didn't notice Thomas's slight smile. Yes, their futures were indeed planned out, just not the way she imagined. The pre-dawn house held its breath as Thomas moved through the darkness, his footsteps silent on the hardwood floors. Moonlight filtered through frost-covered windows, casting long shadows across the living room where the Christmas tree stood sentinel. 3 envelopes lay ready on his desk, each representing a different aspect of the truth he discovered. The first contained the DNA test results, but also something more, a carefully curated collection of moments that defined true fatherhood. Baseball game photos where he'd taught them to read pitchers' tells. Science fair projects that had kept them up late into the night. Camping trips where he'd shown them how to navigate by stars. The second envelope was heavier, weighted with evidence of betrayal. Rebecca's USB drive had been backed up and expanded, its contents now augmented with Lauren's investigation findings. Financial records showed the true scope of Mike and Sarah's operation. Not just medical fraud, but a complex web of money laundering, kickbacks, and international smuggling. Text messages revealed their long game, their careful grooming of Thomas as their unwitting frontman. The third envelope held the trust paperwork, but also something unexpected. Letters from Patricia Chen's banking contacts. The evidence of fraud had been enough to convince several investment firms to freeze Mike and Sarah's personal accounts pending investigation. The boys' future was secured not just through the trust, but through the systematic dismantling of their betrayers' financial safety nets. Thomas placed a single sheet of paper atop the envelopes. The truth is both a gift and a burden. Choose wisely. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of years of deception and the promise of justice to come. Upstairs, he could hear Sarah's alarm chirping. She'd be reviewing her speech for tonight's dinner, rehearsing the moment she planned to destroy him. Mike would arrive later, playing the concerned friend one final time before revealing his true role. Thomas lifted his packed bag from behind the living room couch. Everything essential was already gone, distributed to secure locations, or transferred into ironclad legal structures. His footsteps made no sound as he moved through the house one last time. The display case in the hallway caught his eye: baseball trophies, science fair ribbons, academic awards. Each one represented not just achievement, but moments of learning, of growth, of real fatherhood. Biology hadn't made him a father. Choice had. And now choice would define his final lesson to his sons. The front door opened and closed silently, the pre-dawn air crisp with winter's promise. Thomas didn't look back as he walked to his car. Looking back wasn't part of the plan. As he drove away, the rearview mirror showed his home growing smaller until it disappeared entirely. But he wasn't really leaving. Every lesson taught, every safeguard established, every truth documented. These were his real presence in his sons' lives. Sarah and Mike thought Christmas morning would be their triumph. Instead, it would be their undoing. They had mistaken his kindness for weakness, his patience for passivity, his love for blindness. Their greatest error wasn't in betraying him. It was in underestimating the power of real fatherhood. The truth was indeed both a gift and a burden. Thomas had given his sons everything they needed to bear both with honor. The Barcelona calf hummed with morning chatter as Thomas Baker studied Lauren Martinez's face across the antique wrought iron table. 6 years had threaded silver through her dark hair, but her detective's eyes remained as sharp as the day she'd helped him set his plan in motion. "You need to know what happened," Lauren said, sliding a thick leather portfolio across the table. The Spanish sun caught the gold badge clipped to her belt she'd made chief detective 3 years ago. It unfolded better than we planned, with some delicious twists even we couldn't have orchestrated. Thomas took a measured sip of espresso, his composed demeanor unchanged from the day he'd walked away. Time in Europe had added sophisticated touches to his appearance. Bespoke suits replaced department store ones, but his eyes retained their steady, calculating gaze. Sarah found the envelopes at exactly 6:07 a.m. Christmas morning. Lauren began, pulling out time-stamped security footage stills. She went straight for the tree, probably planning to remove anything you'd left. But when she saw the envelopes, Lauren's smile was razor-sharp. The neighbors 3 houses down heard her scream. The photos showed Sarah's perfectly maintained facade crumbling as she tore through each envelope. Her designer robe wrinkled, her careful makeup streaking as she frantically dialed her phone. She called Mike 17 times in 20 minutes. Lauren continued, laying out phone records. The transcripts are something else. He knows everything. She kept screaming. Fix this now. But Mike had bigger problems. The FDA had just launched a surprise inspection of 3 major hospitals in his network. Someone had sent them very detailed documentation about counterfeit medical devices. Rebecca always did understand timing, Thomas noted, examining the FDA notification documents. Sarah completely lost it when she found the trust paperwork. She'd already called her lawyer, bragging about taking everything in the divorce. Finding out you'd transferred the house, the investments, even the furniture into an ironclad trust for the boys. Lauren's laugh was genuine. The security cameras caught her throwing a Waterford crystal vase at the wall. The one Mike gave her last Christmas, ironically. Thomas's expression remained neutral, but his eyes held cold satisfaction. The boys? That's where it gets interesting. They came down around 7, after Sarah's initial meltdown. Found the envelopes scattered across the floor. Adam picked them up first. He's always been the more analytical one. Spent an hour reading everything before explaining it to Ethan. Lauren produced more surveillance photos of the twins at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, their young faces set in expressions far too serious for 13-year-olds. The DNA test didn't shock them much, she continued. They'd suspected something was off since Sarah's conversation in their room. But the evidence of the criminal enterprise? That hit hard. Especially the emails showing how long Mike and Sarah had been planning to destroy you. Sarah tried damage control, of course, Lauren added, her tone hardening. Showed up in the kitchen doorway, doing her best grieving wife act. Started some speech about misunderstandings and family loyalty. But the boys? Lauren's smile returned. They'd learned your lessons well. Tell me? Ethan spoke first, looked her dead in the eye and said, a real parent protects their children. Dad protected us by making sure we'd have a home and education, even though it meant leaving. What were you protecting when you helped Uncle Mike sell fake medical equipment to sick people? Thomas's fingers tightened slightly on his espresso cup, the only visible sign of emotion. Adam was even better, Lauren continued. He pulled out the trust paperwork and said, Dad taught us to judge people by their choices, not their circumstances. You and Mike chose fraud. Dad chose justice, even though it cost him everything. That's what real love looks like. The morning crowd thinned as Lauren detailed the hours that followed. Sarah's increasingly hysterical attempts to control the situation. Mike's frantic calls as the FDA investigation expanded. The boys' steady refusal to be manipulated by either of them. By nightfall, Lauren concluded, Sarah was in FBI custody. Mike was being escorted out of the hospital in handcuffs, and the boys were safely installed in their trust-protected home, with me as their court-appointed guardian until 21. Thomas allowed himself a small nod. And Rebecca? Lauren's grin turned wolfish. Oh, she saved her best move for last. Want to hear how she dismantled Mike's entire empire in under 6 hours? Lauren spread a new set of documents across the caftable, official hospital board letterheads gleaming in the afternoon sun. The moment Mike was taken into custody, Rebecca called an emergency board meeting. Walked in wearing her usual perfect socialite mask, carrying a Prada briefcase full of nuclear-grade evidence. She laid out newspaper clippings chronologically. The headlines told a story of escalating scandal. Chief surgeon arrested in medical fraud scheme. Counterfeit medical devices found in 3 major hospitals. Charity foundation linked to international fraud ring. Rebecca had documented everything, Lauren continued. Every fraudulent shipment, every offshore transfer, every shell company. She'd been building her case since the day she discovered Mike had deliberately sterilized her during what should have been routine surgery. Thomas's eyebrow raised slightly at this new information. Oh yes, Lauren confirmed. She found the surgical records 3 years ago. Mike altered the procedure without consent, didn't want children complicating his plans. That's when Rebecca started working with federal investigators. She pulled out court transcripts. Sarah tried to cut a deal when she realized how much trouble she was in. Offered to testify against Mike in exchange for immunity. But Rebecca had already provided better evidence, including recordings of Sarah bragging about their scheme during spa days. The transcripts painted a damning picture. Sarah emerged as not just a willing participant, but a key architect of the fraud. She'd used her social connections to introduce Mike to corrupt hospital administrators, laundered money through fake charity events, and coordinated with international suppliers of counterfeit medical equipment. The prosecutor called her the spider at the center of the web, Lauren said. She got 8 years for conspiracy and fraud. Would have been more, but some of her testimony helped bring down 3 other hospital networks running similar schemes. Thomas examined photos of his son's academic achievements, honor roll certificates, debate team victories, science fair championships. Their progress? Exceptional. The trust requirements were clear: maintain a 3.0 GPA and stay out of trouble for access to the house and college fund. They've kept straight 4.0s since freshman year. Both graduated high school as valedictorians. Lauren produced college acceptance letters. Adam's in law school now, top of his class at Harvard, specializing in medical fraud and ethics law. His professors say he has a particular talent for untangling complex financial crimes. She smiled. Ethan's in medical school at Johns Hopkins, focusing on patient advocacy and medical ethics. He's already published 2 papers on improving medical device verification protocols. The boys are building something good from all this, Thomas. Something that matters. Their mother tried reaching out when she got early release, Lauren added. Sent them long letters about forgiveness and family. They responded with copies of their college admission essays. Both wrote about learning the difference between biological parentage and real fatherhood one Christmas morning. The afternoon sun slanted through the CAF's windows as Lauren produced a yellowed newspaper clipping. The boys wrote this 6 months after everything happened. Every major paper in the state ran it. Thomas unfolded the letter with careful fingers. Blood doesn't make a father. Love does. The man who taught us honor by example, who protected us even as he walked away, who ensured we had a future even when it couldn't include him, that's our real father. We don't need a DNA test to prove it. Our dad taught us that character isn't about winning every fight. It's about choosing the right battles and being willing to sacrifice for what matters. He showed us that love isn't about possession or control, but about doing what's right, even when it breaks your heart. Some people will say he abandoned us. They're wrong. He gave us the most valuable gifts a father can give: the truth, the tools to build our future, and an example of real integrity. Biology didn't make him our father. His choices did. And our choice is clear: we're proud to be Thomas Baker's sons. That letter changed everything, Lauren explained. You went from perceived villain to whistleblower hero overnight. Rebecca's patient advocacy organization used it to push through major reforms in medical device regulation. They call it the Baker Protocol now. She showed recent photos on her phone. The boys kept the house exactly as you left it, just added one thing: a home office, always ready. Your birthday and graduation videos are there, but they're not just memories anymore. They study them, learn from them. Before every major decision, they watch relevant clips, asking themselves what you would advise. Thomas maintained his composure, but his eyes softened almost imperceptibly as Lauren continued. Mike serving 15 years in federal prison. His appeals were denied. Turns out judges take a dim view of doctors knowingly implanting counterfeit devices in patients. Sarah got out after 6 years, tried to re-establish contact. The boys sent back copies of their college applications. She produced the essays. Both listed the same defining moment: Christmas morning, age 13, when we learned that truth and justice aren't abstract concepts, they're choices you make, even when they break your heart. Our father taught us that real strength isn't about avoiding hard decisions, but about facing them with integrity and accepting their consequences. It's a lesson we carry into every aspect of our lives. Rebecca divorced Mike, used the settlement to expand her advocacy work. The boys volunteer there during breaks, helping identify suspicious medical supply patterns in hospitals nationwide. They're turning this whole experience into something that helps others. Thomas read his son's words in silence, each line reflecting the principles he'd tried to instill about character, about justice, about the difference between biological accident and chosen family. The real gift wasn't the DNA test or the trust, Lawrence said quietly. It was the choice you gave them that Christmas morning to define family by genetics or by character. They chose well, Thomas. They chose to be your sons. The Barcelona afternoon painted long shadows across the Capitol as Thomas finally allowed himself a genuine smile. He hadn't lost his family that Christmas morning. He taught them their most important lesson, that love isn't about blood or circumstance, it's about the choices we make, the principles we uphold, and the legacy we leave behind. In that lesson, they'd all found their true inheritance. Epilogue, 10 years later. The Manhattan courthouse buzzed with anticipation as Adam Baker, now 33, adjusted his tie in the polished marble reflection. His reputation as the Justice Department's leading prosecutor in medical fraud cases had made this moment inevitable. Across the courtroom sat Mike Williams, gray-haired and haggard, seeking parole after serving his 15-year sentence. The board calls Dr. Michael Williams, the parole chairman announced. Adam watched his biological father shuffle forward in prison orange, the once proud surgeon reduced to pleading for freedom. 10 years had carved deep lines into Mike's face, each one earned in a federal prison where his fellow inmates had their own opinions about doctors who knowingly implanted counterfeit devices. Before we begin, Adam spoke clearly, his voice carrying his father Thomas's steady authority. I'd like to submit new evidence regarding continued criminal enterprise conducted from prison. Mike's face went slack as Adam produced documentation showing attempts to rebuild his counterfeit medical supply network through prison contacts. The parole board members' expressions hardened as they reviewed the evidence. Additionally, Adam continued, my brother Dr. Ethan Baker, Chief of Medical Ethics at Johns Hopkins, has prepared a report detailing the human cost of the defendant's actions. 37 deaths directly linked to counterfeit devices. Over 200 patients requiring additional surgeries. Across town, in a small halfway house apartment, Sarah Baker, who had kept her married name despite everything, watched her makeup run in the bathroom mirror. 8 years in prison had done nothing to improve her character, but had stripped away her ability to maintain appearances. Her recent job interview at a local real estate office had gone poorly when a Google search revealed her past. Her phone buzzed with a text from her parole officer. Miss check-in. Report immediately. Sarah's carefully manicured hand trembled. She'd spent the money for her monitoring ankle bracelet on designer clothes for the interview, convinced her looks and charm would overcome any background check. Some habits died hard. Meanwhile, in Baltimore, Dr. Ethan Baker led his medical ethics board meeting at Johns Hopkins. The Baker Protocol for Medical Device Verification had become the international gold standard, implemented in hospitals worldwide. His office wall held the letter he and Adam had published all those years ago, next to his father's graduation message video still in its frame. The latest implementation reports are encouraging, Ethan addressed the board. Device fraud attempts down 87% globally. The verification blockchain we developed with Dad's old company has proven nearly impossible to circumvent. Rebecca Williams, now Rebecca Chun after remarrying, sat at the board table. Her patient advocacy organization had grown into a powerful watchdog group with offices in 12 countries. The settlement from her divorce from Mike had seeded an endowment that funded research into medical device safety. The Indonesian branch just caught another counterfeiting ring, Rebecca reported. They were using the same methods Mike and Sarah pioneered. The difference is, now we know exactly what to look for. In her own tiny apartment across the city, Sarah spent her evenings watching old social media videos from her glory days. Her attempted tell-all book about the scandal had been blocked by an ironclad non-disclosure agreement buried in the trust paperwork Thomas had left behind. Her former friends had vanished along with her status. Even her tennis club membership had been revoked. Yet in Barcelona, Thomas Baker's life had evolved in unexpected ways. His experience exposing medical fraud had led to consulting work with international healthcare organizations. He'd built a new career helping hospitals protect themselves against schemes like Mike's, though he never used his real name or appeared in public. Lauren Martinez, now FBI special agent in charge of healthcare fraud, kept him updated on the boy's achievements. Adam's prosecution record was unmatched. Ethan's medical ethics work was revolutionizing patient safety. Both men had families of their own now, raising their children with the same principles Thomas had taught them. The trust house remained exactly as Thomas had left it, with one addition. The home office had become a kind of museum: diplomas, awards, newspaper articles telling the story of two boys who chose character over biology. Thomas's graduation and birthday videos played on special occasions, his lessons still guiding his son's decisions. Mike's parole hearing ended exactly as Adam had planned. The evidence of continued criminal activity earned him another 5 years. As he was led away, he finally asked the question that had haunted him for a decade. "Why didn't you help me? I'm your real father." Adam's response carried all of Thomas's quiet strength. "No, you're just a man whose DNA I share. My real father taught me that biology is chance, but character is choice. You chose fraud. He chose justice. I choose to be his son." In her halfway house, Sarah watched another job rejection email arrive. Her parole officer had arranged mind-numbing work at a fast food restaurant, a far cry from the mansions and country clubs she'd once frequented. Her attempts to contact the twins were met with the same response: copies of their achievements, their father's principles in action. Rebecca's organization continued to grow, with the twins serving on its board of directors. The annual Thomas Baker Ethics in Medicine Award became healthcare's highest honor, though few knew the real story behind its name. The foundation's headquarters displayed that decade-old letter prominently in its lobby, its message unchanged by time. Blood doesn't make a father. Love does. Thomas's legacy lived on not just in his sons, but in countless lives saved by their work. The choice he'd made that Christmas morning had rippled outward, transforming personal betrayal into public good. While Sarah struggled to rebuild her shattered life and Mike faced more prison time, Thomas had given his son something far more valuable than inheritance or status: the example of choosing right over easy, truth over comfort, character over circumstance. In his Barcelona apartment, Thomas added 2 new photos to his private collection, his granddaughters, both named Joy, one from each son. He'd never met them in person, but Lauren kept him updated with pictures and stories. They were growing up learning the same lessons he'd taught their fathers. That real family is built on choices, not chance. That love, sometimes, means letting go. That truth, however painful, is always the greatest gift. The real victory hadn't been revenge, though Sarah and Mike's downfall was complete. It hadn't even been justice, though their crimes had been exposed and punished. The real triumph was in the lives his sons had built, the good they'd accomplished, the legacy they'd created. Thomas Baker had lost his family that Christmas morning, but he'd given his sons the tools to build something far more precious, a legacy of integrity that would outlive them all. In the end, that was the greatest revenge, not the destruction of his betrayers, but the unshakable character of the sons who chose to follow his example. Sarah might have taken his marriage, and Mike might have claimed biology, but Thomas had given his sons something neither of them could touch or tarnish: the understanding that real parenthood isn't in DNA or legal documents, but in the choices we make and the examples we set. A decade later, those choices still echoed, shaping not just 2 lives, but countless others. And in that ripple effect of righteousness, Thomas had found a victory far sweeter than mere revenge. The truth had indeed been both a gift and a burden. In choosing to bear both with honor, they had all found their real inheritance. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, Consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.